All right, Chapter 3, Supply. So the last couple of days we've talked about demand, and now it's time to look at the producer side of things rather than the consumer side of things. So we're going to look at supply. For some students this is kind of difficult because we think of ourselves as buyers most of the time. But what happens if we were the producer? Some of the learning targets that we're going to look at in the next couple of slides will be what the supply curve is, the difference between a movement along the supply curve and a shift in supply, and if it is a shift in supply, what are some of those factors that shift the supply curve? Quantity supplied, or QS, is the amount of a good that sellers are willing and able to sell. The law of supply, again, these are kind of similar to the demand terms that you already wrote down, but we're looking at the producer side instead. And so the law of supply states that, other things equal, ceteris paribus, that the quantity supply of a good rises when the price rises. If I'm a producer and I can get more money for my product, I'll produce more. However, if I don't get very much money, I'm probably not going to produce very much. This has a positive relationship. Let's take a look at Ben's supply schedule and supply curve. If we were to plot the points on the graph below, you can see that at $3, Ben's willing to sell quite a bit of ice cream. He's willing to sell 5 ice cream cones. If it's 0, well, then it's not worth him to make any ice cream cones. We can also see what happens if there's an increase in price. If the price goes from $2, let's say, to $2.50, what's going to happen? Well, if you look at the graph, you can see that at $2, they're willing to sell 3, but at $2.50, they're willing to sell 4. So the quantity supplied goes up. Just like the last presentation on demand, we had a change in quantity demanded. Well, now we have a change in quantity supplied. Hopefully by now you're starting to understand the difference between a change in quantity and just a change. A change in quantity supplied is going to be a movement on the curve caused by a change in price of that product. The graph below shows a change in quantity supplied. It shows what happens if the price of ice cream goes up. Because originally at $1, I want to sell very much because I won't make much money. But at $3, if people are willing to give me $3 for an ice cream cone, I'm willing to sell a lot more. And again, this is caused by a change in price of my product, and that is a movement on the curve, a change in quantity supplied. There is also a change in supply, and if there is a change in supply, there's going to be some factors that would shift the supply curve. The factors are listed below for you. Number 1, input prices. So what goes into making ice cream? You might say salt, flavoring, sugar. My students sometimes will say ice. Inevitably, the next person will say cream and milk. And you have producers, you have workers, you have technology, all these resources that go into making ice cream. So what happens if one of these inputs are more expensive? What if there's a bad sugar crop this year? And if there is, that means the price of sugar goes up. So what's going to happen to the supply of ice cream if the price of sugar goes up? Well, there'd be a decrease in supply. And it won't be because of the price of ice cream, it's because of what happened to the price of the input for ice cream. Technology is another example. How many of you have made homemade ice cream before? All right, a few of you. And when's the last time you've done that? Yeah, it's probably been a while. And you've probably done it maybe, what, once, twice? There's a reason why we don't do it very often. It's because of technology. We can go out to Cold Stone and get a very nice ice cream cone, or we can go down to Two Scoops and get some ice cream down there. And it's much more efficient than us sitting at home and making our own ice cream. So technology increases the supply. Expectations. This is kind of a hard one. We got to put ourselves in the shoes of a producer. Let's say that we are owner at Casey's gas station, and we know that the price of gas is going to go up next week. As the owner, what would you do this week, knowing that the prices are lower now and are going to go up? Well, you want to increase your profit, right? So you're going to decrease the supply this week and then release more supply next week when I know I can get more money. This is kind of a hard concept for some students because, again, you want to think of yourself as a consumer, but as a producer, you want to make the most money. The number of sellers. We have Ben's Ice Cream here behind me. What if we added Jerry? No, then we have Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream. I hear that's pretty good. And the last one, taxes and subsidies. Mostly taxes will go on the supply side. And so if there's a tax on a product, this would decrease the supply. A subsidy, on the other hand, is the government giving a producer more money to or aid to increase their supply. Again, we just talked about the different shifters of the supply curve. And when we shift the supply curve, it is a change in supply. It is not a change in quantity supply. It is a change in supply that shifts the curve either to the left for a decrease in supply or shifts it to the right for increase in supply. And we only shift this when it's something other than price of the product changing. Take some time to draw the graph below. This shows the shifts in supply. Draw the P on the vertical axis for price, Q on the horizontal axis for quantity, and then draw your supply curve and label that S, or as they have below, S1. If we have an increase in supply, which direction would that go? Well, it would be a shift to the right. An increase is always a shift to the right, whether it's supply or demand. So if we have new technology, and we can now sell our ice cream at a much cheaper price, and so we can shift that curve to the right. If, however, we have a decrease in supply, such as a bad sugar crop, well, now the price of my inputs of making ice cream goes up. And so I shift that curve to the left, showing that there is a decrease in supply. Some students do have trouble with this, and my best advice to you would be to remember that a shift to the right for demand is an increase. Well, it's also a shift to the right for supply as an increase. A shift to the left for demand is a decrease. A shift to the left for supply is a decrease. So it's both the same. So if you can remember that, this will be much easier. Here is just a quick review for you. By now, maybe you know all this stuff already. I hope you do. And you don't really need to take notes on this, but here's a review for you. If it's a price of the product, then it is a movement along the supply curve, and this is called quantity supplied. If there is something else that changes the supply, such as input prices, technology, expectations, number of sellers, taxes, or subsidies, this will shift the supply curve.